In the beginning, there was Isis, oldest of the old. She was the goddess from whom all becoming arose. As the Cretus, she gave birth to the sun when he rose upon this earth for the first time. Barbara Walker, the woman's encyclopedia of myths and secrets. I sat up abruptly in bed, still in the other world. The blue-black shadows on the bedroom wall looked almost like hieroglyphics I had seen painted on the wall in the dream. Where was I now? Oh, I was asleep in the dormitory of some college. I had returned to school for the master's degree. Now I remembered. I turned my head, slowly remembering the strange extraterrestrial language that had appeared on all four walls of the room only moments ago. They had looked like codes or symbols, some kinds of light geometries written vertically on the walls of the small college dorm room. As I fastened my eyes back on the wall, I could still make out the faint inscription of some of the symbols. How could they still be there? I wasn't still dreaming, was I? They seemed like characters in some ancient Egyptian language, and I zeroed in on them. My eyes came to rest on one in particular. It was a circle with a dot at the center. What did it mean? Abruptly, I heard the answer in my head. This is the beginning of all things, the beginning and the ending, the Alpha and the Omega. I lay back. How did I know this? I felt like a galactic language universal among higher life forms. Somehow I knew that this symbol was a code for something much more ancient than the human tongue. It came from the language of light, the language of the angels. Suddenly, I could not keep my eyes open. I slid back into sleep on the dormitory bed, succumbing once more to the dream time. Hours later, I awoke, disappointed to see that the astonishing writings had disappeared from the walls. Sitting up in bed, trying to remember, I finally forced myself to my feet. I hurriedly dressed and went down to the school library, a vast wood-polished sanctuary with rows and rows of research books. I was determined to find some reference to the one symbol I could recall, the circle with the dot at the center. I was deep in study when a student assistant found me. "Excuse me, miss, but there's a phone call for you," he said. "For me?" I queried. That was odd. No one even knew I was here. How could there possibly be a phone call for me? Surprised, I followed the young man back to the front desk. "Yes," I said into the mouthpiece of the library phone. "May I help you?" "Is this Trisha McCannon?" the female voice on the other end of the line asked. The voice was cool, even, and familiar. "Yes, but who is this?" "We have called to tell you that your dreams are real," she said quietly. "What?" I uttered in astonishment. "What is this?" There was a moment of hesitation. "I am from the Priestess of ISIS, and that's all I am permitted to tell you at this time." The click of the phone was audible as she hung up. Unable to speak, I stood there, astonished for the longest time, looking at the phone. Whoever were the Priestess of Isis, and why were they calling me? Furthermore, how did they even know about my dreams? I conjured up the symbols in my mind. The writing was so familiar. Years later, I was to discover that this symbol was an ancient glyph of the sun, the first principle of life. It was the shape that the sound made when chanted. It meant the Christ, the limitless light, and Ein Sof Or. It was also one of the members of the Council of Nine. The phone beside the bed rang instantly. Without thought, I reached over to pick it up. This time, as I opened my eyes, I realized that I was home in Atlanta. I was in bed. There was no library, no college campus, nothing except my strangely lucid dream. It had all taken place in the inner worlds. Now I was back in the world of photography, advertising, and work, and it was dawn. As I replaced the handset on its cradle, I slowly realized that I had a dream within a dream, and there had been a double message within it, the priestess of Isis in some kind of language. I knew it was important, but I had no idea what it meant. The High Initiate appears. I was still trying to make sense of these things as I got to my teal Honda sedan the next day and left for work. Who were the priestess of Isis, and why had they contacted me? Was this some sort of secret cult from Egypt? Did they still exist today? I started my ignition, and why had I remembered that symbol? I slipped in my car into gear. Deep in the mystery, 2 months later the answers began to arrive. I had stopped for a lunch at a new restaurant, and there was a long wait. To pass the time, I wandered into a beautiful gift shop called Illumina. As I opened the door onto the richly appointed carpet, the store's exquisitely lit crystals and one-of-a-kind jewelry looked unlike anything I had ever seen before. Immediately, my eyes landed on the Egyptian statue. Transfixed, I went to stand before it, letting my eyes sweep over the smooth black sculpture of the beautiful Egyptian woman and two tall feathers at the crown of her head. The saleswoman behind the counter leaned forward onto the highly polished glass, fixing me with her eyes. "Do you like Egyptian things?" she said in a voice softly modulated with power. I turned at the sound. She was probably 45, with a long mane of a thick salt and pepper hair and a strong, attractive face. Her eyes were grey and piercing. I stammered, feeling a bit self-conscious. "Yes, in fact, I've been having dreams about the priestess Isis." Her eyes widened slightly and then seemed to grow sharper, as if she was seeing something around me for the first time. She extended her hand slowly, never blinking for a moment. "Welcome to Illumina. My name is Shasta." I took her hand. "Hi, I'm Trisha," I said, feeling electricity going through me. "Would you like to tell me about your dreams?" she suggested. I blushed. "Well, I'm not sure I even understand my dreams." I looked away self-consciously, trying to decide how much to reveal. After all, since I had been working for many years with masters in my dream state and had been clairvoyant from the time I was a child, I certainly couldn't assume that the perfect stranger would follow my line of thinking. "I'm not sure you'd understand them either," I added lamely. Her eyes brightened and a mysterious smile played about her lips. "Let's just say I might. I'm a high initiate of the priestesses of Isis." Chapter 2. The Magic House by the Grove. I am nature, the universal mother, mistress of all elements, primordial child of time, sovereign of all things spiritual, queen of the dead, queen of the immortals, the single manifestation of all gods and goddesses that are. The Golden Ass. Translated by Robert Graves. A week later, I pulled into a dead-end street hidden in one of the oldest sections of the city of Atlanta. This was the address Shasta had given me after extending an invitation for me to visit. It was a short road, perhaps less than 50 yards, and it appeared to end in the tangle of vines and bushes. I parked on one side of the road, staring straight ahead of me. The house was supposed to be there. I read the address again, checking to be sure I was at the right street, but all I could see was a forest of kudzu, trees and vines. Suddenly, as if a veil had been removed from my eyes, I realized that I was looking at a little white cottage hidden amongst the greenery. It looked like a fairy house. Shells, crystals, flowers, and bones were strewn down the path that led to the front door. The wooden porch was full of deerskins, Indian blankets, rocking chairs, baskets of gourds, and Native American dream catchers. To one side of the front yard were four old metal chairs, overgrown with ivy. A hand knotted rope with brass bells served as the doorbell, and on the front door, behind the dilapidated screen, swung a wooden hearth. I stepped courteously up onto the porch, looking at everything with wonder. Very different from the own lovely, artistic, but very neat and proper house. This cottage felt very much alive. It was magic, was palpable. I sent out my inner senses, and it felt like decades of history was sequestered here. Ghosts of ancient wise women whispered in the air. A spirit house, I thought, feeling the power of the ancestors gathering around me as if they knew I had come. I felt as if I had just arrived in Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tale, and as I pulled on the bell rope, I realized that I was completely uncharted territory. Shasta came to the door. She practically purred as she led me into her quaint little cottage, humming with energy. My eyes drank in everything. The first room was completely empty except for an old stone fireplace and four altars, one at each room's corners. I got a glimpse of the large coiled stuffed snake mounted high in the corner, a large statue of Mary in another with roses at her feet. In the third corner, a cat-headed stained glass goddess about 4 feet tall stared back at me. Who was she? Egyptian? I thought. And then I was past her living room and moving into her kitchen. Would you like some tea? Shasta asked in a softly modulated voice. A white cat jumped down from the kitchen counter, looked up and meowed. There were four white wicker chairs with a small coffee table between them nestled beneath a set of double wide windows. This was clearly where she ate, read, and even served guests. Two other cats, looking profoundly pleased with their lounging activities, yawned up at me. Shasta moved one of them from the chair. Sit down. I'll put on the tea. While she was busy in the kitchen, I looked around, trying not to be rude. The cottage was laid out in a simple square pattern. At the left front was the living room, with the kitchen to the rear. On the right side of the house, I guessed, was probably Shasta's bedroom, and somewhere tucked toward the back right was a bathroom. I have several herb choices, she said across the countertop. I make them fresh from my garden. Would you like some dandelion or catnip tea? I grow it wild here. I had never even heard of catnip or dandelion tea before. Either one would be nice, I mumbled. I had only had herb tea made from a celestial seasoning box. When the tea is finished steeping, we'll go out and sit in the garden through the side windows. I could see that the garden was wild with kudzu. I could also see a little area where the land had been cleared and vegetables planted, but beyond that, almost everything looked half hidden in the green. The trees, the rocks, even the arched arbors of this magical little valley. From here, it looked like an enormous green vortex where the earth dropped away into the center of the yard, leaving this entire perimeter rimmed with trees. Wild roses covered the old fence around the property, making her house almost invisible to those not trained to know what they were looking for. This grove is hundreds of years old, Shasta explained as she saw me studying it. Women have been coming here for centuries to pray. I am the keeper of the grove, along with my old friend Jeremy. Jeremy? I asked. Her chin gestured to the little hidden house on the other side of the sanctuary. I had not seen it before. He is the guardian of the grove, just as I am the priestess. I wondered if he was half as fascinating as she was. Shasta poured the hot water from the kettle into the cups of dandelion. Do you like honey? I nodded. Shasta, do you have a restroom I can use? She smiled, gesturing. Go back through the living room into the healing room. It's on the opposite side of the house. I wandered through the rooms, my eyes large as saucers. I saw turtle shells, snake skins, cow skulls, and fur throws. There were baskets of gourds in several corners and the bookcase of well-loved books. This time, I passed the altar with a beautiful cat-headed being. I studied it more carefully. It looked majestic and proud, definitely Egyptian. In the second corner, I realized that there was a white wolf pelt was draped beneath a white cow's skull. What could that mean? One thing I knew though, the whole place felt alive. As I entered her bedroom, which she had called the healing room, I noticed how pristine it was. Lace, candles, and rattles lay near the mirror, above the dresser, and a large double bed with a white lace bedspread stood against one wall, with a couple of overstuffed chairs. Then I was at the door of the bathroom. From the moment I entered it, I could tell that the house was watching me. A strange sort of power emanated right through the floorboards. There was a window that threw triangles of light into the room, and the afternoon sun was subdued. Everything was white except the walls, the fixtures, the towels, the rugs, but the walls were painted purple with strange swirling symbols, spirals, and portals on them. I felt as if I knew these images. Were they part of the language I had seen in my dream? A shiver went through me. This was a place of power. It felt as if I was living intelligence of the land was here. Like some ancient being was watching. I knew that whatever energy the grove had, this room was one of its exit points, and it seemed as curious about me as I was about it. Shasta was ready with the tea when I returned. Interesting bathroom, I commented dryly. She gave me a sideways glance. I thought you'd like it. She held my eyes for a moment. It was watching me, I said. She smiled. Yes, I know. The grove lies at the intersection of two blind springs, springs that run underground but do not surface. This creates a powerful magnetic field through the river. Women can speak. Come, we'll go outside into the garden. Shasta opened the door and stepped outside onto the porch, into the afternoon sun. The light seemed to glisten off the railing and the teacups, even her earrings. It took a deep breath and followed. River women, I thought, contemplating the meaning of her words. Who was river women? I thought she meant the primordial intelligence of the water itself. As I thought of the water all over the world having an active intelligence, I realized that water passed through everything: cities, mountains, meadows, towns. Water even passed through the ocean and the sky as rain. Water passed through humans and animals and returned to the earth. If water could communicate its vast wisdom to someone who truly knew how to listen, one could learn a great deal simply sitting beside the water. Shasta seemed to be reading my mind. In the ancient days, the women made their homes near water. This was not only practical, it was also for understanding. A wise woman from the village would go down to the water and listen each day. In this way, she would hear news from the spirit of the water about all that was happening in the village upstream. She would know before anyone arrived to tell the elders. This is part of the teachings of river women. I nodded, not even sure how to respond. It was an entirely new way of thinking. Think about it, Shasta went on. If all water is connected to the great ocean, then everything is connected. This is why the goddess, this is why the goddesses was always called La Mère, Mary, Marie, or the Great Mother. She is the ultimate healer on the planet like this one, a water planet. One can sit in the grove and learn a lot about what is happening all over the world just by being still. We picked up our mugs, descended the steps, and entered the magical glade. I followed her silently through the foliage into the back. Three huge grandfather oaks oversaw the little valley, and beyond it were even more woods buffering her from the world. From one oak hung a rope swing. The grove looked for all the world as if we had stepped into an 18th century painting. Several alcove gardens could be seen hidden in the foliage, and now Shasta led me into one of them. A statue of Maria of the Woods, overhung with altar offerings and half melted candles, attested to the fact that other initiates had visited here. Mardi Gras beads, ceremonial objects, and prayer ties all hung from the trees, and the loose assortment of benches, rugs, tables, and candles were half obscured beneath the canopy of foliage. An aura of reverence emanated from this place. Mary is the patron saint of our woods, Shasta explained. Many people have gathered here to speak to her. I nodded, not even able to formulate a question. Despite my years of spiritual training, this was all new to me. The healing energies of sacred rituals were gathered in the silence. Shall we sit? Shasta asked, leading me toward a wicker sofa where I could see down into the little bowl-shaped valley. For the first time, there was a fire pit and four altars, one for each direction. I could feel the power rising from the ground like a pulse. I knew that I was left alone in this grove. I would be able to hear the earth speaking. Suddenly, I spotted three huge cauldrons turned upside down in a circle. The sight sent a shiver through me. I knew from my Christian upbringing that witches use cauldrons. What are those? I said, pointing at them dubiously. She laughed, amused by the fundamentalist sensibilities. Don't be afraid, she reassured me, patting my arm in a Montroni manner. Cauldrons are only iron kettles. You know, people have cooked in them for centuries. I smiled sheepishly, feeling chagrined. My Southern Baptist training was rearing its head. The cauldron you see is like the womb of the earth, the womb of the woman everywhere. It is the dark and round and mysterious, and from it life springs, even if that life is only a well-cooked stew. She laughed and I laughed with her, half embarrassed, half still ill at ease. What had I gotten myself into? The earth is the same as the cauldron, Trisha. The nurturing power of the feminine grows something wonderful from the dark womb that is our Mother Earth. Although most people take this for granted because they are disconnected from the natural world, it is still true. The Mother gives us everything: air, food, water, all our plants, our trees, our wood, our fabrics, even our animals. It's all offered from the bounty of the Mother Life. Life germinates in the womb. This is true for all creatures. It is part of the great mystery of life and death and rebirth. Cauldrons represent the alchemical laboratories that symbolize the nature of women and sacred life. This is also why the cauldron was used in alchemy. Alchemy? I swallowed, my adrenaline humming. What do you mean, alchemy? She laughed, seeing my discomfort, but her voice was patient. Alchemy is a transmutation, Shasta explained. Personal inner transmutation of chemical scientific transmutation. It is all the same. The alchemy of transformation is always done with the four elements because that is the paintbox of the divine. I held her eyes but didn't speak, thinking about her words. The paintbox of the divine? What a strange thought, but true. I realised I wanted her to go on. She sighed. Let me ask you a question, Trisha. What do you think the world is made of? I looked around at the trees, the sky, the bench, my own clothes. I wasn't sure what she wanted me to say. Elements? She said plainly. Lots of elements, like those you find on the periodic table. And each of those elements is composed in some combination of air, earth, fire, or water, aren't they? Yes, I thought. That was true, wasn't it? It was all some proportion of these four simple elements, plus the element of life or spirit that animated it. When Shasta put it like this, it was easy to flow. She continued, so all science is the study of the elements and how they respond to one another, whether it be science of chemistry, biology, astronomy, physics, or even medicine. From herbology to pharmaceuticals, we are talking about how things combine, how they transmute and change and interact with one another. That's alchemy, isn't it? She was right. I realized science is basically the empirical study of how the universe works, how it combines and operates within the ability to perceive its laws. Shasta went on, but there is a deeper level of working with the elements that is known as the great work. This is the alchemy of the human soul, and it is done within the laboratory of time. I opened my mind to let these ideas come in, the past, the present, and the future. These were all known in ancient mythology as the three fates, the three norns that sit beneath the one world tree. The one world tree, I asked, a symbol of absolute behind it all. I looked at the hand, at the heart. Sorry, I looked at her hard, trying to follow what she was saying. She smiled as if dismissing the subject that was too large for the moment. Anyway, that is what we do here in the grove: transformation, connection, prayer, ceremony, the alchemy, and connecting the soul with the divine behind it all. The magician's quest, I thought, the philosopher's stone. They were part of a secret societies connected with the search for the Holy Grail. I knew that for centuries there were legends of medieval alchemists who had sought the formulas to, that would turn lead into gold, create the fountain of youth, and allow them to attain immortality. These were clearly a metaphor for something far deeper. Shasta went on. Whenever someone goes to church to worship, the church uses the same elements, don't they? The Catholic fathers took this knowledge of the ritual and ceremony from the priestess long ago because it engages the inner sense as well as the outer ones. I thought about it. I thought about what she was saying. Yes, they did use air, earth, fire, and water. These four elements were part of every religious ceremony I had ever attended. The burning of incense used both air and fire, so did the lighting of candles. Water was intrinsic to baptism, and the sprinkling of holy water, which represented cleansing. Drinking wine and eating the communion wafers were part of earth, as well as the golden chalice. The sacred cup could represent anything from the act of receiving the womb to the Holy Mother herself. At the ethereist, we even say, take, eat, this is my body that was given for you and for all men. Shasta was right. This is how all the most beautiful ceremonies were done in virtually every religion. They used the four elements because they were, she said. She opened her hands and gestured around the yard. Now look around you. This is the goddess true cathedral, Trisha made of the natural elements. This is why our ancestors built campfires and sat around them. It wasn't just to stay warm or to cook food, it was to dream with the fire. Anyone who has gone camping knows this. When you stare into the flames, we enter an altered state, a place where our vision takes us beyond our mundane things of life into the dream time. She looked out the grove. Those cauldrons are merely holders for the analytical fire of transmutation, like the chalice. It's as simple as that. I took a deep breath. Her words were part of something I had always felt, as if nature itself were the real holy place, not the house of worship. I realised I realised that my silly fears were part of a rigid prejudice against all other faiths, spawned by my Christian upbringing. It was based on ignorance. We had always been taught that anything earth centered was evil, although stepping back from it now, I realised that this was patiently absurd. The earth was the only reason any of us had life at all. Each day we ate from her, drank from her, and breathed from her. How could anyone consider that evil? It was like separating yourself from the the sacredness of God. Even though I thought I had granted long ago from the overt oppression of my church, clearly there were still pockets of its upside down logic left in my psyche. As beautiful as organized religions can be, I had long ago realized that the church separated people by assigning judgment and blame. I had long been on the path of listening to that inner voice that speaks to all of us who come in purity of heart. Yet until the moment I hadn't realized how firmly the fear of witches had been implanted in me. Are you a witch? I blurted out, blushing scarlet with my own lack of tact. She laughed and she shook her head unruffled. No, a witch is a person trained in the Wiccan path. That is not my training. My path is in the path of the goddess. I am a priestess of the Divine Mother in all her forms, but the personal circle of Isis, Quinion, and Skemet, the cat-headed being that you saw inside. The Wiccans work with both male and female deities. Is that why you have three cauldrons? I asked, trying to keep any distress from my voice. She smiled. Yes, they represent the triple goddess. I had no idea what she was talking about. She saw that and went on. These are the three stages of life that every woman lives through: the maiden, the mother, and the matron. These complete the wheel of life, death, and rebirth. The Divine Mother encompasses them all. I had a lot to learn. But what about God? I asked, a bit petulantly. Where does God fit into all of this? Her eyes blazed. Trisha, the male version of the Creator, has plenty of press these past few thousand years. There are many advocates for the vengeful, punishing God, a God who separates and divides, who judges and condemns, a God who destroys and conquers everything that will not submit. I felt the power touch her like a flame. I, for one, chose life. I chose the Creator who unites. I chose peace and unity, not division and war. Our world has seen enough of that to last many lifetimes. She was right. Condemnation, punishment, original sin, blame, and shame seem to be the root of all the patriarchal religions, from Islam to Christianity. They said they revered women, and yet they oppressed them. They said they were bringing forth the teachings of the prophets of love, yet they were more than eager to tell you that you would go to hell. To me, something was fundamentally wrong with the version of the Creator, who would only bless one group and send the others to oblivion. Yet this was the world that we had been born into, a world where men taught oppression in the name of God, and their way of taking the entire planet down and path of abuse. We saw it in the exploitation of children, the killing of animals, and the pollution of natural resources. They gave no thought to the generations that would come after. Their only concern was their own profits right now. I remembered then the creed that the Native American ancestors had tried to live by: make no decision that does not serve seven generations forward. This ensured that we would become wise stewards of the land and the people. I flashed on the words of the Bible, and the tree shall be known by its fruit. Well, our culture and its fruits clearly sprang from the warped and twisted tree. Shasta's voice cut in, pulling me from my contemplation. But who remembers the Great Mother, who actually creates everything, the one who gives everything on this planet life? Who honors her? Tears sprang from my eyes. I could think of nothing to say. All things are born from women, Trisha, Shasta continued in a voice soft with power. It was so plain, a truth that I could not believe I had never occurred to me. It never occurred to me before. She was right. Nothing would be born or live without the creative power of the female. Show me a living creature born of man. It doesn't happen. The best we can offer is androgynous earthworms. I laughed out loud. The image of men claiming supreme dominance as huge aggressive earthworms was just too fantastic. The laughter broke the tension. After a moment, Shasta joined me, and I knew we were visualizing the same thing. Honestly, Trisha, in all the cosmos, it is only the mother who is the life giver. How can God be male? I ask you. Males do not give birth, do they? I looked at her, and beneath the mirror there was a serious glint in her eyes. She is both the Queen of Heaven and the Mother of Earth, but she has been forgotten by her children, dishonored and mistreated. When you come here to the grove, you honor her. I looked out at the ragged beauty of the half-wild garden hidden by the kudzu, just like the goddess. I thought hidden unless you had the eyes to look for her. Shasta's words brought an entirely new way of thinking into my world. I realized that in some strange way I had always accepted God being male. I had accepted the inner picture of some guy with a long white flowing beard who judged and punished us if we didn't do as he said. Shasta, I turned, knowing my persistent gifts were speaking. I know that the time will arrive when I will come here to study with you, but that time is not yet. There are other things I must do first, but I am sure this is why the priestess of Isis contacted me in my dream. She nodded. So when I am ready, will you teach me? A mysterious smile played around her lips. She fixed me with her piercing eyes. So shall it be, and in the years to come, may you discover yourself the answers to who the Great Mother truly is. And that concludes chapter 1 and 2. And I shall do another video to upload on chapter 3. Hope you all enjoyed. Thank you very much.